Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A very warm welcome to all our dear brothers, sisters, and our dear family members tuning into this one-of-a-kind show where we, both you, myself, and the brothers here with us today, will go through some of the ahkam and some of the practices and philosophies of the Hajj itself. You do not want to miss today's episode where we're going to be physically showing you and discussing with our dear expert, our dear respected Syed Raza Rizvi, the steps and practicalities regarding the sa'i between Safa and Marwa. So without any further delay, I would like to welcome our dear Syed to the show. Sayyidina, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you today?
Alhamdulillah.
Dear Syed, so as we were mentioning, today is a very exciting episode, if I may say, because we're going to be physically showing our dear viewers the sa'i between Safa and Marwa. But to get things started, what is Safa and Marwa?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inna Safa wal Marwata min sha'airillah. Indeed, Safa and Marwa are signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they are signs of God because Hajj, the wife of Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, and the mother of Nabi Ismail, or Ishmael in English, walked or ran between Safa and Marwa, the two hills, the two mountains.
Yes.
And she saw a mirage when her son Ismail was a baby who was thirsty and was crying for water. So she ran between Safa and Marwa, she saw a mirage. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made that walk between Safa and Marwa an obligation for all the people who come from for the pilgrimage. And it is an obligation which is also a rukn, which is a pillar of Hajj that you cannot miss out.
Thank you, dear Syed. But for my own understanding, the sa'i itself happens after the tawaf, right?
Yes. So in a normal umrah, which is called umrah mufrada or umrah tamattu, or even hajj tamattu, after ihram, the tawaf and the 2 rakat prayers of the tawaf comes first, and then comes sa'i between Safa and Marwa. So when you leave the Masjidul Haram, where Kaaba itself is, and behind it is Maqam Ibrahim.
Yes.
When you're walking towards Safa and Marwa, from Maqam Ibrahim, Safa will be on your right hand side and Marwa will be on your left hand side. You begin your sa'i from Safa and you end at Marwa. So 1 round from Safa to Marwa is counted as 1 round, and not from Safa to Marwa and then back again as 1. That will be 14.
Okay.
So we basically begin from Safa and it ends at Marwa.
And in total, then we only do 7. So
7,
Safa to
yes.
Marwa 1, Marwa to Safa again 2, and then so on and so forth.
That's right.
Okay, but they say then these are mountains. So how can we, in our ihram, climb these mountains?
Now, today it has become a flat land, and even the mountains have been cut down. So what you will only feel while walking between Safa and Marwa is a slight walk uphill, which feels like that it is uphill now. And that's basically, it is flat land with marbles, and you will feel that this is Safa. You're going uphill. Just a few steps uphill is sufficient. And then you can basically come downhill and then walk back.
Okay. And they say in this respect, I've heard that there is a part where you have to run or walk fast. Could you just explain that as well?
Yes. So there'll be 2 green lights. You will see them on both sides. Once you reach the green lights, it's called harwala. Basically, you jog or trottle like a camel. Comes down the hill. Camel lifts up the feet. So this is mustahab for men to trottle between the 2 green lights, walking between Safa and Marwa, and then from Marwa to Safa, but not for women. So they can just walk throughout Safa and Marwa.
Okay, so it's trotting, not like full sprinting?
No, not sprinting. So it's just basically a little jog.
Okay, and in this respect, are there any du'as or recommended actions we could do whilst doing this trotting itself?
Now, throughout sa'i, there is no obligation to recite any du'as or surahs, but it is highly recommended that for every action that you're doing, there are certain prayers, certain du'as from the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And also, if you don't remember anything, then you can just recite any part of the Holy Quran. If you do not have the supplications with you on paper, then you can just keep reading salawat or istighfar, and also try and remember the holy personalities that walk between the Safa and Marwa. And if you can't remember anything, then just reciting any part of the Holy Quran or Salawat or Bismillah or any dua that you want to ask for yourself would be sufficient. But to remember that it is an obligation and it is a part of the ibadat. So you have to make the intention, and the intention has to be qurbatan ilallah, that I'm going to be walking between Safa and Marwa as sa'i, which is a trial. Yes. So I'm going to be trying. I'm walking, doing this walk between Safa and Marwa, and I'm doing it for Umrah Tamattu or Hajj Tamattu, whatever it is, for Hijjatul Islam, for my wajib Hajj, qurbatan ilallah, wajib qurbatan ilallah. So you will basically remind yourself, if you're doing it on your behalf or on behalf of another person as a naib, you will mention and then you will start your sa'i.
Okay, fantastic. And in this respect, they say this is kind of a technical question, but is there any acts that can invalidate your sa'i between Safa and Marwa? Is it like if you backtrack perhaps, or you doubt if I've done maybe 5 or 6? Is there anything that can invalidate your sa'i itself?
What can invalidate is a break between the walk between Safa and Marwa. If you take a break, sometimes what happens is that you've started your sa'i and then the time for prayer comes and you break, and you've taken a break of, let's say, 10, 15, 20 minutes.
Yes. And
then there are explanations where you were. If you're only in the beginning of your sa'i, then you may have to start again. But if you had completed 3.5 or 4 rounds, then you can continue from where you left off after the prayers, depending on the different fatwas that we have. So it is better that you cannot take too much break after tawaf and the prayers, not a day and night break. So you have to do it the same day after the tawaf and the 2 rakat prayers. The sa'i has to be completed.
Okay, perfect. And just the last point on this, they said, I've heard that after the 7 you've completed, be it for Umrah, normal Umrah, or for the Hajj itself, you have to do taksir.
Yes.
Again, just a brief overview of what this taksir means.
So if you are doing it for Umrah Tamattu or Umrah Mufrada, because for Hajj Tamattu, the halq, the shaving of the head or taksir, is basically after the Qurbani in Mina.
Okay.
But for Umrah Tamattu or Umrah Mufrada, the taksir comes straight after sa'i, and you have to perform it at the completion of sa'i in the haram or in the place where you are. Mm-hmm. And cutting of the hair is an obligation, which is called taqsir, and that is with the intention that you're doing it for, reminding yourself that this is for Umrah Tamattu or for Umrah Mufrada or whatever, wajib qurbatan ilallah.
Thank you, dear Syed, for providing that very beautiful, concise overview. I guess now, with your permission, can we begin practicing it now for our viewers as well? Yes,
it will be good to start from Safa and then perform your sa'i now.
Perfect, thank you. So, dear Syed, with your permission, can myself and the brothers begin walking for the sa'i?
Yes, I would like to just make one point clear, that you can perform the taqsir anywhere in the haram. And your sa'i basically begins from Safa, which is the hill or the small hill that you have to go up the hill and then walk from Safa to Marwa. You can now begin.
Perfect. Brothers, Bismillah.
And while you're walking, as soon as you reach the green light, then you start the jog, or you start to do the harwala.
Okay, so the slight trotting, right?
Yes.
Okay, so.
And then you can stop at the second green light and then walk again.
Sure.
And once you reach Marwa, then that's your first round completed, and then you walk back to Safa. When you are in Mecca, then it will be a one-way traffic, so you'll be on your right-hand side going around in a circle. So now you're going back from Marwa to Safa.
Perfect.
For second round.
And throughout, it's the same intention that
it's the same intentions, and as soon as you reach the green lights, sure, then you again start to jog.
Trotting again.
That's your second round completed.
Perfect. So, dear Syed, we've just completed, myself and the brothers, and our viewers watching us have completed the basic sa'i itself now. Just the one question that comes to my mind is that there's some people who might not be able to walk, or they might not even be able to do trot because of their age. Are there any facilities available between the mountains where they can also perform this wajib action?
Now, The trotting is only recommended, it's not wajib. And it's only recommended for the men and not for women. Secondly, people who are unwell, there are two ways for them to perform it themselves. Either if they can get help, people can hold them and make them walk with them. They can hold a stick or even on a wheelchair. Then they would perform it themselves. And if there is no way for them to perform it themselves, then they would ask another person to perform the sa'i on their behalf. And that will be on their niyabat. So on their behalf, another person will go on to do the sa'i for them.
Oh, perfect. So it's not like a one, all for one, be all, end all. They can ask someone else to do it for them if there's an issue. Okay, perfect. Thank you once more, dear Syed. So, dear Syed, we've just performed the sa'i itself physically, and you very helpfully also explained to us the rationale behind why we do this. Now we turn to some technical questions. And the first is this, that, Safa and Marwa, there's a lot of developments like you mentioned. It's a mountain, but there's marble now, but there's many different floors. Can I perform my sa'i on the first or second floor?
Unfortunately, Ayatul Sistani and other Maraji do not allow the people on Hajj to be performing their sa'i on first or second floor. It has to be on the ground floor where the mounds were, and that's when it is acceptable.
But outside of Hajj, we could, technically speaking, perform it on the first and second floor?
Not even outside Hajj. Whenever you are there for Umrah Tamattu, for Hajj, it has to be on the ground floor.
Okay, so it has to, it's a certain rule, you can't change it, you have to be in the ground floor.
No, our Maraji do not allow that.
Perfect, okay. And they say in this respect then, you mentioned the trotting, and we showed it to our viewers as well. Can I perform this trotting throughout? So for example, the time of azan is very close. I don't want to be in a position where I doubt how many I've performed. Can I do a quick trot 7 times, or does it only have to be within the green lights?
You can trot throughout, but generally because of the crowd and there are so many other people, it will be quite difficult to trot throughout. The second issue is that sometimes you will be troubling others if you're trotting because they are trying to walk and there's a large number of people present.
Okay.
You have to make sure that you are not troubling the other people that are performing the sa'i.
Thank you, dear Syed. But in regards to the taqseer at the end, now we know after performing the 7 rounds, men can cut a part of their hair or some of their nails. But what about women? If they cut their hair openly, isn't that showing their hair to the public?
The women can go back to the hotel and perform their taqseer at the hotel. Generally, why we try and do the taqseer for men at the point of sa'i is that as soon as you perform the taqseer, you are out of the state of ihram.
Okay.
And as soon as you're out of the state of ihram, then you can cover your head, you can wear shoes again, you can look into the mirror, and that's what is important. Many times going back to the hotel, you may be taking a taxi which is covered.
Yes.
So it is very important that for women there are, it is not so difficult. They can go back to the hotel in a taxi and then perform the taqseer at the hotel.
For men, it's best to do it at the place itself.
Yes, because they cannot travel in a taxi back to the hotel, and usually they do not wish to walk back if it is during the day. During the night, it is okay.
Thank you, dear Syed. Do any of our brothers have any questions?
Yes, I have a question. Whilst performing sa'i, is it possible to turn back around?
You cannot go back while walking, but there is no problem in turning around. So if you turn around, if you look back, it does not break your intention, it does not invalidate your sa'i. Your sa'i will be fine, your sa'i will be valid. So if you only turn around to look back, there is no issue. You have to, but you must not go back. You have to keep walking in a fashion that you start from Safa and end at Marwa.
Just the final question on this, dear Syed. This question we get asked many, many times. If a person is performing his own taqseer, he can't do anyone else's before he does his own, right?
Yes.
In the instance that he forgets, he does someone else's, his brother, his friend, what can he do to rectify the mistake?
Okay, I mean, he has penalty if he has performed the taqseer of another person. If he had forgotten, even then he has to repent, but the other person should also do the taqseer again. because a person who has not performed his own taqseer is not allowed to perform the taqseer for another person. So he has to rectify it, he has to perform his own taqseer, a penalty, and also the other person should also perform the taqseer again.
Thank you, dear Syed, for the beautiful explanation and for answering our questions. We really appreciate your efforts. Dear viewers, that brings us to the end of the show for today. Thank you for being on this journey between Safa and Marwa, where yourself, me, and our dear brothers were going through some of the practices and philosophies of the Hajj itself. Do join us again next time. Until then, take care. Wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.